Welcome everybody to the Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation's webcasting series. I'm not sure it's fair to call it a series because this is really the first one, so maybe check back on the next one and it's officially a series. I'm Rob Girth. I'm the Director of Digital Media here at the Reeve Foundation. And we're calling this set, and we're going to have a bunch of different types of series, but this series we're doing is with Dr. Dan Gottlieb, and so we're calling it Dr. Dan On. And today, Dr. Dan On is going to be on navigating intimate relationships, love, sex, and vulnerability. And if you don't know, Dr. Dan is a practicing psychologist and a family therapist. He's been doing that since 1969. He's been living with spinal cord injury since 1979. And of course, Dan's a regular contributor to the Reeve Foundation community, assisting spouses, families, friends. I mean, he's just, if you haven't been in the community and you've just found out about this in another way, please go to christopherreeve.org and click on right at the top it says join the discussion at the very top of the page. Go there and have a look at the community, and you'll see what we're doing there. Now, it's a bit of an experiment today, so I hope you'll bear with us. We're going to try something a little bit different. Most webinars you go to, you sit and listen and usually get distracted and start doing other things. What we really want to do here is have a discussion, and we have about 28 people on board, so we're going to try to have more of a discussion than we are a lecture. Dan doesn't want to give a lecture. He really wants to get to talk to people, and that was part of the genesis of this whole project, is all the conversations that were going on in the Reeve community. We wanted to sort of make them a little bit more personal by having a little bit better contact, and hopefully this will be a great way to do it. So we'll be able to take questions via the chat box, which you can see there. And we're also going to take questions via the phone, and I'm using the word questions, and I really mean we'll start a discussion, because what we're going to want to do is open multiple phones at once, so multiple people can talk. So different than, like I say, most webinars you probably attended, you're going to have to contribute information, and then you're also going to have a little help us with the technology, in that we're going to unmute everyone's phone, so you're going to have to manually mute your phone and only unmute when you want to join the discussion. And let's find out and see how that works. It's going to be part of the fun. Hopefully no one's dog will be barking in the background the whole time. If that happens, we'll have to stop and call you out, whoever you are. So let me introduce you to Mandy, who is here to help us with the technical aspects, and Mandy will explain the muting and unmuting process, and then we'll get started. Go ahead, Mandy.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have a question or comment at any time during the presentation, you may press 6-6 to unmute your line and 6-3 to mute. To ensure the best audio quality, please use your mute button when not speaking. You may also submit your questions or comments using the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. I would now like to turn the conference over to Dr. Dan. Please go ahead.
Well, hello, everybody. First, I want to thank you for taking part in this grand experiment. And I ask for your indulgence because I don't have great dexterity with this technology.
No, that would be horrible. There we go.
I lost you there. And one of the themes that I keep hearing over and over is about the search for kindred spirits. You know, we get involved in the web page because, you know, we're looking for people that get it. And I think that works beautifully. I wanted to go a step further, and especially with these issues that are so very important. And I wanted us to hear each other, to feel what goes on with each other's lives, and perhaps get out of this through sharing experiences, some ideas, thoughts, and at the very least, just a sense that we are in a community that all struggle with similar issues, hopefully in different ways. So there's nothing more complicated than intimate relationships. Nothing. I mean, I had someone say to me in a session that they wanted to get into an intimate relationship because they were looking for security, and I couldn't help myself. I just kind of laughed because you're pretty insecure when your heart's open, when you're vulnerable, when you are struggling to know and be known. It's not secure. You're always a bit insecure. There's always a bit of tenderness and vulnerability there. So how do we do that? How do we navigate those waters? That's one of the things I want to bring up today as a question. When I was in rehab at McGee many years ago, we had what they euphemistically called a family room, and that's where you could practice sleeping with your wife or intimate partner. So I go there with my wife. She transfers me into bed, and the pressure's on. I mean, it's not have sex when you're in the mood. It's have sex tonight so you can see what it's like. And neither one of us know what to do. And she puts her hand on my face and my shoulder and moves it down to my chest, and I begin to cry and say, "Don't touch me where I'm dead." So you can imagine how well that went for us. But what that did was it forced us to talk about it. And we weren't good at it back then. We were both young and didn't quite know how to. But this forces us to talk about not just what feels good and what doesn't and how to do it. Those mechanics have to be talked about. But it forces us to think about and talk about what intimacy really means, what we really long for in a relationship, what our hearts want. And in a way, that's good news, that it's an opportunity for us to talk about it. So that's what I want to do today. I don't have a ton of answers, and we'll start with, I guess there's a way, Rob, people can raise their hand when they want to come in?
Yeah, or we can just have them unmute, and we'll see what happens.
All right.
So
we've got Ida.
I see a hand up. Ida has a hand up, so go ahead, Ida. Let's see if the unmuting is working here.
Ida?
And I also see Stephanie's got her hand up, so let's maybe we'll see if Stephanie has something. We'll make this work yet.
How about a reminder on how to unmute?
Yep.
Ladies
oh, go ahead. Yes, please, Andy.
Ladies and gentlemen, to unmute your line, please press 6-6.
And then let me point out that there was two ways to log in. One is if you dialed the phone number and clicked on the link. The other is if you clicked on the link and if you're listening on your computer. If you're listening on your computer, I'm afraid you can't participate in this audio telephone line. You can just listen. So only the people that are actually dialed into the phone line can actually talk. But if you have a question, you can just use the chat and do that, which Ida has done. So let me tell you what Ida has said. She's saying, as a woman, my initial experiences were not good.
Anything else?
No, that's what she said. Ida, if you have something else, go ahead and add to that. Oh, here we go. My body was not responding.
Well, that does raise the question then about what sex means before and after our accidents. Is sex about having an orgasm or helping our partner have an orgasm? What is it? What is it to you? There was a woman back on the web page who said, she used to love sex when she was a teenager. It was all about the body and it was all about satisfaction. And she said, now, 20 years post-accident, she's 40 years old, sex means something very different to her. Sex is about intimacy and closeness and not necessarily about orgasm. So, yeah, it's difficult, and there's great losses. There's a great Sufi saying that I'm fond of, and it says, when the heart weeps for what it's lost, the soul rejoices for what it's found. And we have lost a great deal. And we're not going to have what we had yesterday. And, you can say that whether you are spinal cord injured or a caretaker. You can say it if you're not disabled. You can say it to anyone, that all pain is where yesterday used to be. And we all strive, it's a reflex, to have what we had yesterday. And when we're able to say goodbye to that, it opens the door to new adventure.
And let me add, I think this is going the same direction here. Barbara says via the chat here, men see the wheelchair before they see me and therefore think of me as a liability more than an asset, or see me as a target. I've lost trust and all my money trying to trust and protect myself at the same time. I know I am fortunate to have the ability and desire to be intimate, but haven't been for years. How does anyone in a wheelchair find a loving man who sees your value and desire in an intimate relationship, and desires an intimate relationship?
Well, I would love to hear from others. I know an awful lot of people that are joining us today are women, and I'm guessing a lot of them, have lots of experiences. I'd love to have some of these women weigh in on how do you meet a man who's going to look at you and see your eyes and not your wheelchair. Where do you go? I guess either gender also. Is there any way we can have a phone conversation?
Yeah, is anybody out there on mute? Unmute yourself and let's just see if this works.
I'd love to talk with Hector. He's been...
Yeah, it's a matter of whether they are dialed in or if they're just listening over the computer, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
How about somebody who's dialed in just to try it out for us and just say hello, just to make sure we are using that? Any of you guys? There's like 31 people right now. Anybody who's called in? There we go. So it does work.
Hey, Rob. It's
Who is
Candace.
Oh, Candace. Wonderful. Thank you, Candace.
It works.
It does work. Okay, so if you're on the phone and the unmute was, what the heck was it? Was it 66?
It's 66.
66. So just hit 66 and you'll be able to talk. What a good person you are, Candace.
Oh, thanks. I was kind of in a noisy place, so that's why I stayed muted, but I'm moving away from a lot of the noise. There's still a lot around me. Am I noisy?
No, you sound great.
No, you do
sound
cool.
Great. Well, I love this new start. It's awesome. And Dr. Dan, I really enjoyed your column a lot.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm not in an intimate relationship right now, so I can't really kind of speak on that. But I know where I have found people in the past is where I'm doing things. I have to put myself out there, and I have to put myself out in situations that are where I like to be. And kind of on another note, I have some friends now that are using Match.com and eHarmony and things like that, and they're finding that men and women are finding that, about 2/3 of the time when someone finds out they're in a wheelchair, they don't want to go any further with meeting the person. And so they're really moving through people quickly. And that's kind of a good thing if you want to find someone, is to get on something like that where you can get through the kind of BS quick. And, and other people's issues about the wheelchair is kind of my feeling on that. So
say that again. What did you just say?
I said I have some friends that are on eHarmony and Match.com, and they're finding about 2/3 of the people, both men and women, that I know they're on it, are having problems with the wheelchair. So they're able to find out right away if someone has an issue with it and move forward without all the BS that kind of goes along with that when you're meeting someone and they're uncomfortable, but they're not really saying it, and yada, yada, kind of thing.
Candace, the other thing with that is you can choose when to tell people you're in the wheelchair. And
exactly.
And one's attitude is really important with this stuff. If you go into it knowing that most of the people, or 2/3 or 3/4, are going to drop out, but what you are left with could be something very special, or someone.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's really well said, and that was my meaning behind it, was that you have an opportunity to be able to sample people quickly and know where you are and be able to move forward if you're serious about an intimate relationship. And on another note, because I've been using a wheelchair from a spinal cord injury for 37 years, I have definitely noticed that it's a very different dating situation for a man in a wheelchair than it is for a woman in a wheelchair. They're very different worlds when you're dating. And the woman that said that a lot of men look at the wheelchair first, it's opposite for men in wheelchairs. The women may look at it, but they really jump at the opportunity to pull out that nurturing part, is what I've found in the past.
Well, a woman once told me years ago that what a woman really wants is to see a man without his mask. And that's part of the reason why men might get the response, because a man in a wheelchair is vulnerable. And it opens up that nurturing part, but, we have less defenses, less shields, less protections than men who can pretend they're not vulnerable. We can't pretend that we're not vulnerable.
Yeah, we have this identifying mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, though? I have to tell you, in my experience with that vulnerability, the more open I am, the more vulnerable I am, the easier my life gets.
I agree with you 1,000%.
Yeah, don't have to pretend, don't have to. And I want to share something with you and everyone else listening. My marriage ended in part, because of my spinal cord injury. And I got into a couple of relationships, long-term, after that. And they were nightmares. They were disasters. And now, after all these years, about 5 years ago, I met and fell in love with one of my nurses and vice versa. And there's a quality of this relationship that I've never had before. We're both vulnerable. We're both caring. And neither one has to pretend anymore. You know, I feel love for her without grasping, and vice versa. You know, after all these years, I am able to see her as a person, a woman, and care for her and her welfare, and vice versa. And when I was younger, I wasn't able to do that. It was all about holding on and that illusion of safety and caring and being taken care of. And after all these years, it's now more other-directed. And I would have hoped in hindsight that it could have happened 20 years ago. But I don't know. I think that's one of the lessons I've learned. Somebody said in this, I forget who, in this chat, she said, it really is about, you talked about putting yourself out there in the beginning of our conversation. Mm-hmm. She said, it's really about acceptance of yourself, not your disability, but who you are and what you're about. Acceptance of yourself as a human being who's vulnerable and insecure, who's wonderful and creative, you know, who knows how to care and longs to be cared for. But if you can accept that package in yourself and approach yourself with kindness and compassion, then who you put out there is likely to attract a whole different animal.
Absolutely.
We tend to, you know, we tend to invite a reflection of who we are, So I believe Hector wants to join the conversation. Am I right?
Hector, did you switch to a phone line? If you do want to join the conversation and you are listening on your computer, you don't have to change anything. You want to just mute your computer audio, and you want to just dial the phone number, and I'll tell you the phone number, which is 800-404-8174. And if I may, Dan, if I may ask a question, I'm going to put this poll question up here, I think. To see if people can take this poll. So you found somebody. I'll put up the question, is your partner your caretaker? And I'll ask you that question. I'll ask that question to you, Dan.
Well, no. And yes. Am I clear about that?
Yes, totally clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
My partner, we're not living together yet, but she is one of my nurses. She works 1 day a week. And it's funny that we've just started talking about how she's going to have to quit. She's going to have to, yeah, she's going to have to dump me as my nurse. It's getting awkward for both of us. You know, her back isn't the best in the world, and she can't do too many transfers. So on days when she's working, I'll get up extra early so my night nurse can transfer me, those kinds of things. And that's not going to work in the long run.
Well, and that goes to a question that Lydia had chatted, and I'll put that on to everybody, which is how do you handle being intimate with your partner if they're also handling your toileting?
Good to have that conversation.
Pardon?
Who's that?
This is Hector.
Hector, great.
I'm glad I got to join you guys because it's been a great conversation so far. Dr. Dana, I've heard a lot about you, so it's really good to be participating in this as well. But, you know, there's been a lot said that I could definitely relate with 30 years post in regards to intimacy and sexuality. I had the honor of working with, God, now I can't think of their names, Sexuality Reborn when we did the sexuality video. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that Kessler video that we did there on Sexuality Reborn back in 2001, I guess, and 2000. But in regards to when we were making this video on sexuality, I was having to void, having to empty out my bladder, and we were in a 69 position. And what we simply did is, me and my partner have always communicated about toileting and what happens about this. I mean, we really had to have the hard conversations, first of all, the ones that I was embarrassed to admit, the ones that were very difficult to talk about. And we worked through them, you know. She was able to grab a urinal and put it between my legs, put a pillow over on top of it, and it didn't stop our momentum. So I think you're really going to have some of those hard conversations in the very beginning, you know, yet there's so much other stuff that's being talked about. So I'd like to listen to a little bit as well.
Hector, before you go, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
All right. So give us a feel for that conversation if it's not too personal.
No,
How
not
did
at
it
all.
go? What did it sound like?
You know, I was injured when I was 17 years old. I'm a Hispanic. I was very sexual prior to my accident. I guess I started having sexual intercourse, God, very early on, whether it was with masturbation at the age of 7 and 8 all the way to my first intercourse around 15, 16 years old. And then I had my injury at 17 years old, and I was dating a girl who was a year older than me. So she was right there with me in rehab, going through the whole, doing my bowel program and doing my catheterizations and stuff like that. And, you know, we experimented. We experimented. She wanted to know what I could feel, you know, and it's been like that throughout the 30 years. It's being able to communicate what I can feel, what I can't feel, how I can move, how I can't move, how I need her assistance. You know, I mean, I think a lot of that is Tantra. If there's many people that are familiar with Tantra, it's about an honest communication about what it is that you want to experience.
I think, Hector, an honest communication to me might start with the words, you know, I'm pretty anxious here. I'm pretty uncomfortable. I've never done anything like this before. I'm worried about how you might react or where this might go. And I'm
sorry, Dr. Dan. But I started like backwards. I had to learn how to communicate those things that you just said because prior to that, yeah, exactly. I was a kid.
Yeah, but you know, for any of us to enter into those serious, difficult conversations, we're going to have all these emotions. And if we can talk about our fear, just say it up front, it makes the conversation go much more smoothly. If somebody wants to talk to us and begins with the words, I feel anxious here saying this, or I feel vulnerable, I mean, think about what that does to you. I mean, it opens you up. You feel caring and protective when that happens. So I think if we can begin the conversation with those words, if that's what we're feeling, it does make it much easier after that.
Women actually admire that.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, I'm curious. Thanks so much for the conversation, Hector. I really enjoyed it.
Let me just throw out two quick little comments that have get on the chat here. One is Ida talking about, similar to what you're talking about being open, I guess, is because of my injuries, the trembling creates a weirdness. And then Elizabeth is saying, from a different angle as far as opening up. One of the things she does with meeting men online is to include her wheelchair in her picture, so people know up front, what the situation is.
Huh. That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I didn't understand Ida's trembling.
She said because of her injury, she has trembling, and that just is uncomfortable for her and when she gets to that point in the relationship, I think.
So the trembling could be anxiety, or it could be spasms.
Yeah, it sounds like it's part of her injury, yes.
Yeah, it's probably spasms.
Ida, you don't happen to be on the phone, do you? It would be great. Nope. Okay. Yeah. Here I see it's injury related. Very good.
And look, I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations, but it does seem to me that so much of what we deal with is really shame. Shame of how we look, questions about whether we are still sexual. My God, I had those questions for years. I had questions about whether I was even lovable. Of course, I was an insecure guy before I broke my neck, and God knows this didn't help. So the issue of shame can really keep us stuck in our lives. When Ida says uncomfortable, and that usually means shame, and I feel that often. And what feeds shame, what makes shame worse, is silence. And the only cure for shame is sunlight. And one of the things I'd always wanted to do is rewrite the children's book, The Emperor's New Clothes. And the punchline of this is the kingdom was able to fool the emperor into thinking he was wearing a beautiful suit when he was really had no clothes. And he paraded around the kingdom, and everybody clapped, and he was very proud, but really they were making fun of him. Well, I want to rewrite that book so that the emperor knows he has no clothes, and he's still proud of himself, that he's still comfortable with his own vulnerability. I mean, that's one of the byproducts of spinal cord injury and many disabilities, is you feel a quality of nakedness. Because of the way we're wired, there's shame attached to that. It needs to be opened up, It needs to be talked about. I tell my partner frequently when I feel shame. I've told my daughters when I feel shame. And it really does change everything. So I don't know if you want to weigh in through chat, your feelings about this, and whether it does feel like shame, and whether you'd be comfortable opening that up with your partner.
This is Candace, and am I still unmuted?
Yeah, you still go. Go ahead, Candace.
Oh, okay. I want to weigh in on the shame aspect, because I agree with you, Dr. Dan. I think it's something that not just people with disabilities deal with. I think it's something that all people deal with, and it's a feeling that you're not lovable. And I found that how you said it really greatly is about the silence helps it grow, and I think a conversation with other people works, but also a conversation with ourselves and paying attention to when those feelings come up and what situations really trigger them, and write those down or record them somehow so that we can become familiar, or this is what I've done for myself, so that I can become familiar of the situations and emotions that pop up, and that feeling comes forth where I feel like I'm not good enough, or like I don't deserve it, that kind of thing. And it's helped me get clarity of when it happens so that I can let it go and be more open and vulnerable.
It's a great idea. That's great. Thank you, Candace. We just got an entry from Lisa, who said, let me see if I can find it. Again. Come on, finger.
Is it about erogenous zones?
Yes, thank you. Here, I got it.
You got it? Okay.
She said, I've read that erogenous zones become different on those with spinal cord injury. Can anyone speak to the overall sexual experience, feelings-wise, before and after? And Lisa, I wonder if you could comment about whether you are spinal cord injury or whether you are a partner or caretaker of one. But I would love to hear people weigh in on that. I will. So what's changed for me? It's been 33 years since I've had an orgasm the way I used to. And over those years, I've had more and more pleasure with sex. I derive a great deal of pleasure and excitement, physiologic excitement, with my partner as she moves, the sounds that she makes. And they trigger those same sounds in me, the sounds of one being pleasured. So as I pleasure her, I feel that quality of pleasure. I feel really turned on by small things that I wouldn't have noticed before. Sounds, movement, sense, taste, the temperature of her skin on my cheek, things like that. It's an exquisitely erotic, sensitive experience. So have the zones changed? Yes. When I'm having sex, my lips are very, very sensitive. And all the time, my scalp is. I mean, if somebody starts rubbing my scalp, almost any time I'll start to be like a puppy dog, where the leg starts to move involuntarily. It's not pretty, but I can't help it.
It's quite a visual.
So, I mean, that's my response, Lisa. I wonder if, let me see, Richard says, I feel this my body, and if you don't like it, the shame is on you. Yeah. Well, if your partner doesn't like your body, then you're with the wrong partner. If your partner is uncomfortable or confused or embarrassed, that's normal and human and healthy. And my goodness, if that can only be talked about honestly and openly. We've got Samishra. I hope I pronounced that name right. You want to join the conversation?
Yeah, let me just remind you, if you want to unmute, just hit 6-6 on your phone and talk. We'd love to hear from more of you. There's over 30 people logged in right now. So don't be shy. That's what this is all about.
be able to get on. I'd love to hear from partners who are caretakers.
Well, I see that someone you know from the community is on here. Trish is on here. And she does say it's extremely difficult to be a full-time caregiver and a wife to your disabled spouse. The intimacy feels very wrong. I feel more like my husband's mother than his wife.
Yikes.
Yeah, and I would imagine, Trish, you're not alone with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult, and it's very difficult to set up those boundaries. You know, I am fortunate. I have the luxury. My partner can quit as a nurse and become my partner. I'm sure she will still continue on occasion to do bowel routines and, you know, transfers and cath care. But it's not going to be part of her routine job. I don't know if there's any answers. Anybody want to weigh in? I'd love to hear for some more partners who are also caretakers about navigating those waters. Trish, I appreciate your bringing that up. I also heard from another partner of a pretty high-level quadriplegic, and she said that oral sex to her felt almost like rape, that she was laying on top of him, having him pleasure her, and she didn't get what he was getting out of it. So, of course, it's not, as one who is on his back. I told you about the pleasure I get, but that's another conversation that we just have to have. Rob, we have another poll up. Number 4? Can we? Yeah. I put that up that way, but I forgot to put in there all of the above, which is probably...
Well, you can actually select multiple ones on this poll, so you can pick as many as you want.
Okay. Elizabeth said that he did things like help me catheterize if they came up. It's a powerful lesson that we have to learn, that we can be both vulnerable and strong. And one of the most important lessons I've learned is that the only way to be strong, really, is to be comfortable with your own vulnerability, comfortable with your own dependency. And if you are there, you're stronger than most. You're more courageous than most. It's hard to get to, but you have to give up fighting to be somebody you can't be. And live your life as it is. Own your life. Enjoy it as it is. One of the things that I've noticed in these chats, Rob, is that most people do enjoy their lives. The vast majority do enjoy their lives.
And I know Sir Mitha is trying to dial in. Oh, I just saw she's an international call. We have fans from overseas. And no, I'm afraid that is not an international number. It's just North American number, so I apologize for that. But if we know we have international fans, we can add that to the box of tricks that we have. Sorry about that.
So, Sharmisha, maybe you could just, send something in the chat. Send something in the chat, and we'll try to address it. So let's see what Elizabeth said here. She said, when I assert to men that I'm a normal sexual being, albeit different idiosyncrasies than women without SCI, they simply believe me and treat me that way. And I would say this, they believe you and treat you that way because you believe those words. That those words are coming from someplace inside of your body and not coming from your head. Because if they were coming from your head, that gets picked up. That gets picked up. Stephanie's trying to join the conversation. She said she's a caretaker, and she's on the phone with her hand up. Do we have you, Stephanie?
I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
Very well.
Perfectly. Go ahead.
Okay. I was married for 22 years to an incredible guy with a spinal cord injury. He was in his chair, had already been in the chair before we met. And one of the things that I wanted to convey to all of you that are talking about, when you're looking at dating, when you're looking at your partners, is to understand that a lot of us that are also the caretakers are wanting to convey to you that even though there may be moments, there may be days where you may pull out your hair or where you may say, yeah, that affected me in a negative way, on the whole, we don't come to bed with you. We don't go to the end of the day closing off it going, wow, we really wish we were out of this situation. We may say in an instant or in a moment, like all human beings, that something may be affecting us. But like one of the things I used to say to my husband, because his legs used to get ice cold, and he would say, I feel bad. I don't want you laying next to me because I know my legs are cold, and I know it gives your, I know that makes you uncomfortable. And my response was to say, I would much rather be right up next to those cold legs than know that I'm not in bed right next to you. It wasn't a matter of what worked sexually all the time or didn't that mattered to me in as far as being able to say we had a great sexual relationship or an intimate relationship. It was all the little efforts that he made or that I made that communicated to us on an ongoing basis that I valued him, that he valued me, that the little things that mattered to him day to day and the little things that mattered to me day to day that we paid attention to. I hear it from other couples all the time, and he was a marriage and family counselor, so I still hear from couples all the time. And if that's the one thing that I could convey to all of you that are out there, where your partner is your caretaker, is to recognize that we really honestly see so much more of you than just the day-to-day care or the intimate care or the bowel care, the urinary tract care, all of that stuff. It becomes just part of our world. But you guys being a part of our world, that's what makes intimacy incredible. And
Steffi, I love what you've said, and I so wish someone like you for everyone I know with a spinal cord injury. But there's more to your story, because you can't generalize that. And if you don't mind, stick with me for a couple more minutes, because I want to unpack your relationship a bit. Okay?
Okay.
His injury happened before you were married or after?
Before.
Okay. All right. So tell me, it's going to sound like a weird question. Why do you love him?
I loved him because he had a compassionate personality. He was feisty on his good days and wasn't afraid of his quiet days. And he wasn't afraid of the same parts to me. I have my feisty days and I have my quiet days. And we opted to decide that together that those were compatible.
What does he do for you in this marriage? What's his part of the marriage? I'm having trouble with my language here, but so many people with spinal cord injuries feel that they're just on the receiving end.
That's one of the things that we had to learn. That's one of the things that we had to that we encouraged. And like I said, I was married for 22 years. My husband's been gone now for 9 years.
I'm sorry.
And I still work with other couples trying to encourage them. It was a matter of us having to figure out with each other what are the little things that matter. He knows that I have a heart for various different people groups. I work with felons. I work with survivors of violent crimes. So I work with both ends of those spectrums of people. He encourages me to hang out with the individuals that I hang out with that not everybody else in my world can relate to. I work with a lot of street people, and so that's what he chose to pay attention to.
All right, I want to underscore this. This is so important on both sides of the wheelchair, on both sides of the bed, that what he's done for you, what he did for you, kind of encouraging you to be who you are, compassion, caring about the person you are. What you're telling us without words is that matters so much more than the way he empties his bladder or his bowels, or who does it, or the way he has sex. All those get dwarfed by the fact that he cares for the person you are with compassion and generosity. And that is how we opened this discussion. And that is the nature of intimacy as far as I'm concerned. That's the nature of love. That's the nature of true love, what the Greek call agape, this kind of generous love simply for other. And that's what you had. And
that's so what happy. Made him my lover.
Yeah, I'm so happy.
That's what made him my lover.
I'm so happy you had that. I'm so happy you can share that with us. Thanks so much, Steffi. And unfortunately, we are out of time for today. I almost said out of time for today's show.
Well, when we make this a daily show.
Right.
Unbelievable response. I feel bad because we have so many things in the chat that are hanging out there. What I want to say just is a little bit of, if I may, Dan, I'll give you the last word, but I'll really quickly say I'm going to put this poll up just because we're curious about how many people are living with a disability that are tuned in and how many came as a partner, just to get a count, just a rough count so we can see that. Also, when we end this, you're going to get a survey, so please, I'm pretty sure there's at least one open box where you can put any comments in, and we will do our best to follow up on all of them. And not to forget that, again, if you just go to christopherreeve.org and at the top of the page it says join the discussion, and that'll take you to our community where we are having this discussion. You'll find it'll be pretty easy to find Dan's section over there. So that's just my little bit of bookkeeping. Go ahead, Dan, if you have anything you want to say.
Well, I also want to mention that our next one will be on November 7th, and I have no idea what we'll be talking about. I guess some of that will be based on what we hear in the feedback. I'll tell you one thing I can promise you we will not talk about, and we will not be talking about the election will have taken place the day before.
Oh, right, that's right. Yeah, we're going to try to do these. The goal is to do these the first Wednesday of every month at the same time. And hopefully, I think I'll make sure when I put out the next one, we'll make it a little bit clearer that people should use the telephone number if they want to call in and be part of the conversation. See if there's some more people out there that want to talk as well.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, selfishly, just the way I'm wired, I love the phone conversation. So if you guys can call in, I think it'll make it richer.
So I hate to stop, but let me say thanks for joining us today. And like I said, you'll get an email. Actually, you'll get the survey, and then you're going to get a second email that just is that will have the link to the archive in case you want to share this with anybody else, or if you want to just listen to it again. So that will be it for today. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this. Robin,
we'll do more.
And thank you. Thanks for setting it up.